Hey everybody, how you doing? Hope everything is going well with you. And I'm making this vlog because today will be the 16th. Actually, it is all the way to the 16th for me on the West Coast. Don't know about you. And any moment now, maybe they really already have. Let me check the city's website, or maybe they have, but they're supposed to release their updated term sheet to make the A's and the Major League Baseball happier about the prospect of remaining in Oakland and finishing Howard Terminal. That I hope they don't believe that's going to be the last straw, because where we are right now reminds me of where we were on August 15th, 2015, when I was at the special NFL owners meeting to determine which group got the right or progressed better in their quest to bring the Rams back to Los Angeles, either Stan Kroenke or a group headed by represented by Carmen Policy, I should say, and headed by a combination of Mark Davis and the Raiders and the San Diego Chargers, led by Dean Spanos. Remember that little competition there? Okay. The one that Stan Kroenke won? Okay. Well, there was something else that was revealed at that meeting, and the best way to show what that something else is to show it to you right now. And with a basic setup, I simply asked the question, well, you know what? Here's NFL Executive Vice President Eric Grubman at the podium. This is at the Schaumburg Marriott on the day of this video, but you're about to see, which is the 12th of August of 2015. I had said the 15th of August, the 12th of August. And this question was asked by, well, yours truly, and it was asked by Eric Grubman, who was right there before you. Here it is, as we establish it, right here.
Commissioner, this is Abrams, E62 Media. You mentioned the home markets. Focusing on Oakland, can you address from the NFL's perspective the City of Oakland and County of Alameda's attempt to retain the Raiders in Oakland?
Jenny, thanks for that question. Let me try to address that because I've been there personally several times over the course of the last couple of years. The Oakland Raiders have great fans in Oakland City and the County of Oakland and a lot broader territory. But the facts on the ground are that there's been no viable proposal that's been made to the Raiders. We've said one thing consistently to any of the markets that have been engaged in trying to put forth a proposal, and it really rests on a couple of pillars. One of them is that a proposal has to be specific. The second is it has to be attractive to a team. And the third is it has to be actionable. And so what actionable means is it can't just be an idea. To the extent that there's enabling legislation or enabling financing activities, or there are litigation threats or anything of that nature, anything that needs to be assembled has to be assembled in a time frame where a club could act on it. And thus far, those sorts of tests have not been made in Oakland. So as of yet, there is no proposal for the Raiders to consider.
A quick follow-up. The city primarily is under the impression they have until the end of the year to put something together. By your statement, is that not the case?
Well, I go back to what we've said all along and what I just said, which is it has to be actionable. You've asked a hypothetical question, and I don't want to give you a hypothetical answer, but if a proposal is made at any stage and it is not actionable, meaning the enabling legislation, enabling financing, and all those other things aren't in place, then it's really not something the club could act on. And I leave off whether it's even attractive. So there's no artificial deadline in place. It's all subject to whether a relocation is filed for and whether that relocation can gain the support of the rest of the member clubs. But if one can, the alternative has to be something that's actionable.
Thank you.
Tom, you were saying?
I might just add, we need
Yes.
certainty to any proposals. That's one of the things we're very focused on.
Roger, Tom Hill, 0 US.
And I'll replay that for you, just so to make sure that you can hear it again, because it's worth, it's worth
Commissioner, this is Abrams, NE62 Media. You mentioned the home markets. Focusing on Oakland, can you address from the NFL's perspective the City of Oakland and County of Alameda's attempt to retain the Raiders in Oakland?
Bernie, thanks for that question. Let me try to address that because I've been there personally several times over the course of the last couple of years. The Oakland Raiders have great fans in Oakland City and the County of Oakland and a lot broader territory. But the facts on the ground are that there's been no viable proposal that's been made to the Raiders. We've said one thing consistently to any of the markets that have been engaged in trying to put forth a proposal, and it really rests on a couple of pillars. One of them is that a proposal has to be specific. The second is it has to be attractive to a team. And the third is it has to be actionable. And so what actionable means is it can't just be an idea. To the extent that there's enabling legislation or enabling financing activities, or there are litigation threats or anything of that nature, anything that needs to be assembled has to be assembled in a time frame where a club could act on it. And thus far, those sorts of tests have not been made in Oakland. So as of yet, there is no proposal for the Raiders to consider.
A quick follow-up. The city primarily is under the impression they have until the end of the year to put something together. By your statement, is that not the case?
Well, I go back to what we've said all along and what I just said, which is it has to be actionable. You've asked a hypothetical question, and I don't want to give you a hypothetical answer, but if a proposal is made at any stage and it is not actionable, meaning the enabling legislation, enabling financing, and all those other things aren't in place, then it's really not something the club could act on. And I leave off whether it's even attractive. So there's no artificial deadline in place. It's all subject to whether a relocation is filed for and whether that relocation can gain the support of the rest of the member clubs. But if one can, the alternative has to be something that's actionable.
Thank you.
Tom, you were saying?
I might just add, we need
Yes.
certainty to any proposals. That's one of the things we're very focused on.
Roger, Tom Hill, 0 US.
Okay, so the big difference between that presentation and what we're faced with today is that, first of all, the Raiders were in the position of sitting back on a throne, if you will, and saying, show me, show me. The difference is that the Athletics are in the driver's seat forming their own plan. The city, maybe it should be, but the city isn't forming a plan for the Athletics. It really is in unison. The trouble is that the city has placed itself into a major behind the scenes problem because of the way it's handled this whole thing, which I'll get to in a moment. But it's those actions that the city didn't take that have gotten us to a position now where this week that ugly term was used. In fact, I haven't heard that term since August 12th, 2015. And then, of course, people started repeating it again and again and again and again and again and again. And, I should take a look at the Google trend for viable and see what its, rises and falls were. And if it had anything to do with Oakland over the past, 7 years, I'll bet it did. But this time we had Major League Baseball Commissioner Bob Manfred come along, and he said, similar to Eric Grubman, that in terms of the use of the term viable, that Las Vegas is a viable alternative to Oakland if the Athletics must relocate. And then he doubled down on the use of the term viable when he remarked that the Coliseum was not a viable alternative. So you're wondering, where did he get the term viable? You know what? I would bet money that he got it from Eric Grubman. That statement has been indelibly marked on the forehead of Oakland since that August 12th, 2015 date that Eric Grubman uttered it. Anyone who follows the matter of the Raiders' relocation from Oakland to Las Vegas knows that. It was the statement that pretty much killed the Raiders' chances to stay in Oakland and Oakland's chances to retain the Raiders. It was as if to say, you know what? Boom, that's it. Not viable. And anytime someone came up with an update regarding what Oakland did, someone on social media in particular, more often than not, rather nastily would say, not viable, not viable, not viable. There are people who use that term more than they actually breathed air. It was nuts. But the question is, does it exactly apply in this case? And I have to tell you, it does. Because the simple fact of the matter is that for staffing issues and for issues of basically lack of know-how, the city itself has placed the entire effort behind the 8 ball. It is less complicated to develop a baseball stadium in Nevada and Las Vegas than it is in the Bay Area. And it's not just the community groups. It's not just the regulation, but the fact, and this is a very unique fact, that we have gotten rid of a financing mechanism that, for all practical purposes, built modern Oakland among other cities. Redevelopment, I'm talking about tax increment financing in broad use. And what we're replacing it with, which right now they're using economic, enhanced infrastructure financing districts. I've got all these EIs in my head. That's not really an effective alternative to redevelopment. And the one that the city of Oakland should be using, which is community reinvestment and, community revitalization and investment authority. The Community Revitalization and Investment Authority Act, which was passed AB2 in 2015, the one that they should be using that gives more flexibility, they're not using. And the reasons why they're not using have not been explained. Other than, and knowing how the city of Oakland works, someone knew a consultant who they had a relationship with, and it went off from there. In other words, it wasn't a real solid, let's use the spreadsheet and compare the alternatives evaluation. You can't find that anywhere, folks. That's dated. Oh, sure, they can make a one up just to say, oh, Zinni is wrong. Here's what we were thinking about. But there is nothing in any document that shows the city sat down and said, what are our alternatives regarding having a redevelopment type approach? And I know, because the reason why the city is in the position it is now is because I'm the person that introduced the idea of using enhanced infrastructure financing districts in this whole environment in the first place when I was talking to Dave Cavall about it. And the reason why I was so hot for it at the time is, frankly speaking, I didn't know myself about the alternative. It only came up later. It's that little used and that little talked about. And the first time it came up as an alternative in 2014, the governor vetoed it. It was changed to AB2, and with very little fanfare, it passed. I mean, minuscule, okay? So I'm not saying that I had the answer back then. I didn't. But I did have the answer of using redevelopment and tax increment financing. And I gave that to Dave Cavall on the 4th of April. On the 4th of April of 2017. And that's where it came from. And so where we are is that Cavall brilliantly, and I thought this was a brilliant move, they took that conversation he and I had where he hadn't known about the Gruen and Gruen Associates study of 2010, which was done for the first, remember Let's Go Oakland, to build the first version of Howard Terminal there. the one that also wound afoul of neighborhood criticisms and the same kind of environmental attack as Caval is facing today. That one, well, what we got out of that was the Gruen study, and it was a great one. It gave us the tax increment financing forecast, and if you look at it carefully, the zones that were mentioned in the Gruen study very much match the IDL zones that have been considered for Howard Terminal. I have to be honest with you. I am not thrilled about this back and forth regarding what the shape of the enhanced infrastructure financing district should be. And the reason I'm not is because I've said it before and I'll say it again. You don't target shapes. You target assessed value. And the simple fact that the city has spent this much time arguing over a shape and not a target assessed value is demonstrable the fact that the city does not understand what it's doing, because you target the assessed value with respect to how much tax increment you need to implement the plan you are trying to establish. So this whole thing has been done. I'll say it. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Bass backward. All right. And that's why we're behind, because when they try to move forward with the plan, they should have stuck with SB 293 Skinner rather than saying we're going to run away from it. Even as Dave Caval says, hey, no, let's pay attention to it. All right. All that argument right there back and forth is superfluous. It should never be. And it will be interesting to see if the city actually learned anything when it introduces its term sheet. Right now, the Athletics are in a position where they know there are fewer requirements that they have to deal with without help in Las Vegas than in Oakland. And there are a lot of council members in particular who really shouldn't be driving this, but they are, who, in a way that they weren't driving this in the past in Oakland. This is actually a first in Oakland's history that we've had this many, and this is a really big problem, that we've had this many chefs in the kitchen. So if you wonder why this seems like it's back and forth and to and fro and changing, because you've got a lot of council members who are new. You've got staff members who are new, like the project manager hasn't been with us since 2019. And the deputy city administrator is still new to Oakland in her guise. I'm talking about Ms. Lake, and in particular with this. And so with all of this new leadership involved, who hasn't done redevelopment before and doesn't understand that when you propose you're going to use tax increment financing, it automatically means you aren't going to use the county's money, BART's money, AC Transit money, the school district's money, and the EB Mud Flood Control District's money from the jump. You have to talk with them the minute your legislation is approved, either at the local level or the state level, or in the city of Oakland's case, both in 2019. Instead, it's quite evident that happened, because if it had happened, the county of Alameda would not have turned around this year after the mayor said, hey, by the way, we need your monies, and said, hey, what do you mean? All of a sudden you're talking to us, where were you before? And why is this coming up right now? And then the county wants to know, why are you bringing us back into the sports industry? Okay. And so my point is that you can't get anything done effectively. You have all of this noise around. You have a conference that was done, like it was yesterday, that I think someone expected me to attend. I didn't get the invite for it. I told her about it. But my point is that all of this rancor, all of this yelling and screaming that's going on now, when the project appears to be at touchdown's door, should have happened over a year ago. And instead, for example, when I attended the town hall meeting that was thrown by now Oakland City Council President Nikki Fortunato Bass on the 20th of November of 2019, where I said, hey, can I explain to the people present what tax increment financing is, and the $1.4 billion at that point, given what I thought was going to be a 40-year bond issue, they should expect, over, assuming, of course, just roughly a $1.5 billion stadium value. My point is, can I explain that? Carl Chan said he didn't want me to. The city staff didn't want me to, from the city administrator's office. Why? I've said this before and I'll say it again. Well, we got to have lunch. They never explained why. So the city, in hiding all of this truth, put its own self behind the 8 ball. There's no other way to explain it. I've said it. I use the term incompetence. People didn't like it, but it's true. Again, I have 33 years of experience at this. I've earned the right to call it like I see it. I don't care if someone doesn't like it. The mayor should not be offended. She should know better than to have me out there with this kind of experience squawking. As opposed to saying, Zinni worked on this. He's my god brother, whatever we want to call each other. Let me get him involved. That would have been the smart thing to do. And for those of you who are saying, well, he's a journalist, he shouldn't be. I'm not. I'm a blogger. Okay? So throw that away. And not only that, people who are in media who want to practice the old way need to first admit that they don't understand what they're covering with respect to economic developments, and therefore should not try to shut down somebody who has been involved in this at all. Okay? The problem is that now, and this better get straight fast, you have a plan the community worked hard on. The community is under the impression it's not going to be used, but they're blaming the athletics. It's not the athletics' fault. The problem with the enhanced infrastructure financing district approach is simply that it has a limit in terms of spending and what the money can go for that cuts a lot of the community wishes out. That's a big problem. That's why the city should immediately shift to the community revitalization and investment authority alternative. It's a better way. All you're doing is recreating the redevelopment agency in a streamlined way without the restrictions. It has some. Those restrictions are more along the lines of the degree to which you closed out your previous redevelopment effort if you're only going to do it as a city. But if you are going to do it and team up, say, with EB Mudd or the County of Alameda, or maybe the City of Oakland teams up with the Port of Oakland and creates a joint powers authority, which I think is more logical. If that's done, it's a great way of skirting the bullcrap, okay? It really is. And the city and the port could do it like that, all right? A joint powers authority effort between the City of Oakland and the Port of Oakland hasn't been done in quite some time. In fact, not for this, okay? Not for this. But there's every reason to actually do it. And in particular, with respect to the A's project, it's something that should be done now. I can't say we should have done it because, look, I didn't think about it that way. I didn't know that we were going to get into a place. I thought the city staff had it. I thought that they knew what the money was and they were working on it behind the scenes, but it turns out that they weren't. All the time they were saying, Zinni, don't talk about it with the Chinatown community group. And I'm putting out the revenue estimates. What were they doing? But think about it this way, folks. You would say that's just Zinni talking. And to an extent, it's not just me talking, but I am talking about it because it's esoteric, subject matter, right? But the fact of the matter is this. We wasted time that isn't even accounted for in any future schedule for Howard Turnbull. You show me where the schedule is regarding structuring the bond issue and floating it. Instead, what we get, and this is really the scary part that really drives me nuts. We got the city's consultants telling us you have to wait for the tax increment revenue to grow rather than bonding against it. That's the stupidest thing in the world I've ever heard of. Look, they didn't wait in the Raiders case in Las Vegas. They figured out a way to get it done. And that is what's going to get us in trouble. I'm going to tell you this. Even if we get an affirmative vote from council, which I expect, it doesn't mean the A's are locked in here. Don't even think that's the case. Okay? My point is this. An affirmative vote from the city council does not give city staff the right to screw up and continue to make mistakes. If the process does not advance toward a rapid consummation of a plan for a stadium for the athletics in Oakland, forget it. All right? And for those of you who are, and I really stopped talking about me about looking good or bad. This is ignorant, okay? I'm sorry, Excel Generations. And great to see you, all right? But I got to show this, all right? Asking me a coin flip question is ridiculous. And the reason why I say that is because of how this stuff changes and everything else. All right? Well, I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. I remember early on when the NFL approved the Raiders to move to Las Vegas, I didn't think it was going to happen. There were a lot of reasons to believe it wasn't going to happen. Financing, the stadium. Remember how long it took them to actually finally get documents together? Remember how they kept moving the goalposts with Las Vegas Stadium, I'll call Allegiant Stadium? Do you remember the date? The November 14th, 2016 night at midnight. Actually, it was after midnight when the Nevada Department of Transportation dropped a documented bombshell on the Nevada legislature stating that traffic improvements for what is now called Allegiant Stadium were going to cost $900 million. Remember that? I lived that. I lived that. I mean, it felt like going through Twitter, and at that time, you could actually kind of move your way into the legislature. You had pictures and everything. You figure out who was doing what. You could text people, figure out what was happening. That was an interesting moment. That almost killed the project. And I say that for another reason. What do we have last Saturday? Yeah, Garth Brooks, 65,000 strong at Allegiant Stadium. Yay for Allegiant. But what happened when they left? They had a hard time getting out of there. Why? They didn't have the traffic plan implemented. Okay. Why? Because they didn't have the money to do it. Okay. There was all this talk about it. They were going to have a tax increment financing zone in the original legislation. But guess what? For some still mysterious reason, it was taken out. It's gone. All right. So Excel Generations, how do things look? Right now, look, they don't look good, but can they change? Yeah. First of all, they need to have an affirmative vote. That's got to happen. A, straight up. B, the city needs to, after it gets its affirmative vote, get this financing issue out of the way and stop ignoring the hard part. The hard part is money. That is the hard part. That's the part the city needs to pay attention to first. It has spent a long time ignoring it. Get out of the way. Once you've settled on the zone, schedule the creation of the financing authority to float the bonds. and then fashion a bond issue around the plan. If the city can't do that, the project should rightfully be considered dead. You hear what I'm saying? If the city can't do that, the project of keeping the A's in Oakland at Howard Terminal should be considered dead. It will be the most managerially embarrassing moment in the city of Oakland's long history. But I'm telling you, if the city shows no sign of being able to square that financial circle and getting away from this piecemeal, loosey-goosey, we'll make the money down the road crap, it's ridiculous. And you want to know why it's really ridiculous for the city to come out and talk that way? Because let's say that you're a taxing agency like the school district, who I would negotiate with anyway. I don't care what the legislation says. I would change the legislation so that I would negotiate with the school district. I would work up a rider to change. I would promise the school district $100 million in assistance, say $65 million. We would target that money. We would go to legislature and say, hey, we want this exception to the code. We would get our exception because the Republicans would love it. And we would move forward. A number of you out there saying, well, I thought that they can't. Let me tell you something. For those of you who are really novice at this, government is about changing laws to get things done. It's not about having a law in place and then saying, we can't do it because the law says this. That's for babies, okay? If you really understand government, you look at a law and you say, how can I change that to meet my needs? And then you do what? You go and you try to get it changed. That's why I have to say this. That's why I get pissed off with all this protesting. You want to change the world? You change the laws. There was this nutcase that floated a law. This is no joke, folks. Listen to this. He floated a law that, if it had been passed, would have allowed anyone, LGBTQ, it would put that person in danger from someone else in California. That's all I'll say because it's that morbid. Guess what? It got as far as the Attorney General's list before it was spotted. One dude put that there. So you mean to tell me that all of us that want police reform can't put it out as an initiative? You see what I'm getting at? It's taken this long for laws to march through. And even then, it's happening at the wrong time because of this uptick in crime due to the downtick in money. But I digress. My point is this. Laws are meant to be changed. And you want another example? Look what the A's and Dave Cavall did in getting SB 293 Skinner, thank you, Nancy Skinner, California senator, passed, formed and then passed. There's another example. You want to achieve something, the law standing in your way, you change the law. You want to achieve something, the law standing in your way, you change the law. You want to achieve something, the law standing in your way, you change the law. Okay? That's what you do. The course isn't correct, you change your course. So I'm saying again, if the city of Oakland has not squared this circle in terms of saying, let's fashion a way to have an upfront bond issue. And I know they're talking about it behind the scenes. If they don't do it in a timely fashion, the project will die. Because how can you negotiate with anybody if you don't have the money to give them? If you say you're going to wait for the money to grow, you're not going to have it. But if you say, hey, you know what, I'm going to float this bond issue for like 500, 600, let's say $800 million, all right? And here's how we're going to cut it up, okay? And we want you part of this plan with X, then you're talking, all right? If you say to the A's, we will get a development partner for you to then build enough structures to reach a $2 billion assessed value target, which would then yield, all right, if you get taxing agencies to play with you, right? Well, they would say, oh, yeah, sure, you can use our money, not a problem. then you get 2.6 billion, not 1.8 billion. All right. Some bozo put out a study saying, "Oh, these numbers are these expenditures are too big to deal with. Oh, they can't handle. They've never done it before." Get out of town, will you? Get out of town. Heck, get out of the country. All right. Okay. Jeez Louise. All right. So I'm going to take some things are looking awful bleak. Not awful, but again, I'm saying just let it play out. Right now, they don't look good. Okay? Hey, how you doing? Again, it changes. Well, I will say this. It's not so much our politicians, it's our structure. I want to give you something to think about. What do Jerry Brown, the late Ron Delbs, rest in peace, Gene Kwan, and Libby Schaaf all have in common? Yeah, they're mayors of Oakland. But what else do they have in common? I'll stop it right there. They're all mayors in Oakland under strong mayor. And what's the one hallmark activity that we have seen all through the time of strong mayor, former government in Oakland? Sports teams leaving. I contend that if we had a council manager form of government, and this is hindsight being 2020. All right. But I contend that if we had a council manager form of government, that wouldn't have happened. Because the Fred Blackwells of the world, as brilliant an economic development officer as there ever has been one, who is now the CEO of the San Francisco Foundation, I believe still, would still have been in place and would not have jumped ship because he thought he was going to get fired because of the projected change in leadership because his boss, Gene Kwan, wasn't doing so well at the polls. Okay? All right? The Oakland politicals think they're too smart, and yeah, all right? So my point is that these are the things to watch out for. These are the things to watch out for. First of all, the new term sheet if the new term sheet does not peg assessed value, we're screwed. If it doesn't say we're going to do this for you and help you achieve a rate of total tax increment revenue of $2 billion or north, 1.8 billion fine, but $2 billion or north, we're screwed. Because that's achievable. You're going to get greater than 4% rate of growth at Jack London Square Howard Terminal. That's coming, folks. Bank it, okay? It's been that way before. There's no reason for it to change. The county can already increase the assessed value by 2% each year. 4%? Geez, it breathes 4% rate of growth in assessed value the Jack London Square area does. It just does, okay? So anyone telling you, like our current assessor, I mean, popped off at the presentation with the city to the county that, well, I'm going to have to tell the mayor that the rate of growth is going to be less than the 6%. You know what? It's going to rebound. It's going to rebound. Bank it. It will rebound. Point that I'm making is that if you consider, hey, designing a bond issue at debt coverage ratio of 2, sure. Maybe you want to play with 1.75? I wouldn't. Leave it at 2. Give you a nice cushion against default. Take it from me. Clark County's learning the hard way. Early on, I said, you need to do a debt coverage ratio of 2. Oh, no, 1.5 is fine. Tanked. Didn't work for them. Not working for them. And it won't for a while unless they get help from the infrastructure bill, which I pray they do. I pray they do. Welcome to the show. Okay? So if that term sheet says nothing about that, if that term sheet does not mention when the city is going to establish a finance authority, as far as I'm concerned, it's dead in the water. They need to get the money situation out of the way. All right? They should have done that over a year ago. Right now, because the way society is anti-intellectually designed, yeah, I said it just like that. What happens is people degenerate in discussion of things they can see, like design and shapes. So it becomes talk about the building or talk about the shape of the district. It's the assessed value that matters. That's what drives the increment. You can get it all kinds of ways, not necessarily the shape of the district, but the value of the building. What is the value of the ballpark? It's $1 billion plus. Maybe it's going to be $1.5 billion. I think it's going to clock in at about $1.7 billion. Who owns it? The A's. There's one for you. Then you add on to it. You get a developer partner for the A's, which are master developer because they'll wind up owning all of Howard Terminal. And you sing off to the sunset. That's how you do it. If the term sheet does not point a true north toward financing, it's worthless. Okay? I don't care what you say. I don't care what anybody says to you. I don't care if you're one of these journalists that are just recording what other people are saying, but you don't understand what you're being told, because you don't. And the reason why I'm saying like that is because in the old days, if you had a specialist like me who as a blogger who knew things, the media people, the journalists asked. You guys don't do that now. You think you got it. You don't know crap. You don't know crap. So, all right. Oh, and by the way, there's no federal grant of $200 million. And I'm telling you, that was to be from the state. That right now is superfluous. That is not going to solve the problem. It's a nice have, but it doesn't solve the problem overall. Why? Because the question is achieving the certainty of revenue from tax increment financing. And you can't do that if you're not going to float a bond against the revenue stream. And if they're sitting back waiting on Godot translation, the infrastructure bill to pass, okay, you have enough money to deal with it, the costs, out of TIF revenue if you focus on having the proper assessed value target for the base year. In other words, let's make sure we've got at least $2 billion in a new construction online at that time, including trucks, unsecured property, leases. Grab all that up. Hey, you know what would happen if they made the maritime people happy? You know what they would get out of that? Unsecured property, more tax money for the increment. Ooh, okay? On top of everything else. So ideally, they should have a consortium that's made up of Schnitzer Steel and the waterfront organizations as one developer, another developer for the A's, and then the A's is the master developer. And they're all city building and planning things together, right? That's the way it should be done. The mayor organizes that. The point person organizes that. Remember how I started this whole presentation with Eric Grubman from the NFL? Eric Grubman was the NFL's point person. You want to see right up front, okay? You want to see right up front how the city should look when it is presenting its plan. You want to see what that should have looked like I mean, straight away, I'll tell you what it should have looked like. All right. It should look a lot like the image that you're about to see right now that I'm going to show you. It was August 12th of 2015. And the simple image has been seen again and again and again, purely of Eric Grubman on the one side with NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell standing next to him. That image shouldn't be exactly that, of course, but it should be the mayor standing to one side like Goodell's doing and the point person there. That's your point person. The city doesn't have its point person. Who is it supposed to be? All right.
Ownership has no information.
Commissioner, this is Abrams, NE62 Media. You mentioned the home markets. Focusing on Oakland, can you address from the NFL's perspective?
So you see what Roger does? He turns to his point person.
The city of Oakland and County of Alameda is
And they teed this up. They had this all straight away.
attempt to retain the Raiders in Oakland.
Yeah.
All right.
Jenny, thanks for that question. Let me try to address that because
Boom. Okay. That's what point people do, folks. All right. That's what point people do. What did we get when the city did that at the county? I am not going to replay that embarrassing sight for us. You know what I'm talking about. It was awful. But all you have to do is compare the two. I'm not gonna, at least not visually right here. I think I've said enough. The city has to prove it's gotten its act together. It's not about the A's and affordable housing. It's not about the athletics and community spending because it's not their responsibility. And no, I'm not defending the A's just because. But I am saying something to you that I have said again and again and again. I will continue to say. Government is supposed to drive this car, not the A's. Why? Because the A's and Dave Cavall and company don't understand tax increment financing revenue like the city is supposed to. It's the city's money. You can't ask the A's to run it for them. I don't care if their consultants were supposedly had done it before. They were certainly quiet, weren't they? If the A's consultants were supposedly the ones who did it better than the cities, we haven't heard from them either. And they didn't make the A's look any good. In fact, the person that got them into this mess was me. And I work for free. Stupid, me, yeah. But here's why I say that, because look, I would rather see my city better off by using the answer I came up with than saying I'm not saying anything, they have to pay me. Because millions of people can say I've got the answer. But if you ever put it out there and no one else has an answer, then everybody else starts looking at you and saying, yeah, he had the answer, you didn't listen to him. I did that. I've done that a number of times in my life. Okay, because, and I'll just finish the thought, it's always the white person that the person people want to listen to, but they'll figure out some kind of stupid reason not to listen to somebody black. And sorry, folks, I feed off situations like that. I just do. So anyway, annoy the Giants. Keep the A's. I like that. Yeah, we have to annoy the Giants. See, I thought, in fact, Matt, I'm going to leave this up here because it reminds me of what I always thought Howard Terminal was good for. I thought the idea of Howard Terminal was so that we could like fashion this gigantic slingshot and just aim it at what we used to call Pac Bell Park. Right? I mean, I'm kidding, of course, but that was the idea. It was basically to be able to look from McCovey Cove, look over to Oakland, and then say, "Hey, we'll see you over there, right? We'll see you over there, right?" And then we'll be over at Howard Terminal, point over at McCovey Cove, and just go, "Yeah, we got you, right?" It was all in fun, you know. It was nothing against East Oakland. The Coliseum needs a plan. The simple fact that the Coliseum is seen there without a plan and we're not dealing with sea rise tells you all you need to know about Oakland leadership problems, rather than this consistent whining that we've done over generations over someone white getting help. I'm just being really honest about it. People are not going to like, but it's true. Someone white developer getting help, but saying, we're not going to do that because you didn't pay attention to the black area first. So we cut off that in the case of the uptown and shopping centers. All right. We've done it twice. We cut that off, but we get no other investment that others say we want. We have done this to ourselves as a town many times over. And that is one big reason why, when it comes to public projects, we fail. Instead, what gets built is private and white. And then the Planning Commission just rubber stamps it, rubber stamps it, rubber stamps it. So basically, the white side of Oakland's development is A-okay, but when it comes to something that's built ideally by African Americans for everybody, right? Or by someone like the A's for everybody, just when it seems like we're going to get to touchdown's door, all of a sudden these roadblocks get put in the way, and the developer is made to look like the bad guy when it's the city that needs to have its act together. That has happened many, many times in Oakland's history, even when we had redevelopment and supposedly knew better. But now we really don't know better because we have people in place who don't even know how to do it to begin with effectively. They're learning, everyone's learning on the fly for the most part, okay? Everyone is learning on the fly. That's the biggest problem with this whole thing. You've got the project manager learning on the fly. You got the deputy city manager learning on the fly. You've got the city administrator, excuse me, I say city manager, I mean city administrator. You have the city administrator who's new, learning on the fly. You have this dramatic turnover in leadership because of strong mayor. I argue that if we didn't have strong mayor, and I said it earlier on, and I'll repeat it, we would not be in this situation. We'd be better off because we would have more intact institutional memory and a book on what we did wrong so that we don't make the mistakes again. Instead, here we are again talking about Oakland and viability. All right, folks. We'll be back tomorrow or later today. Subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark oaklandnewsnow.com. We'll see you later today. That ends this broadcast. Well, by the way, if you have any comments or statements you want to leak or a video statement, which I prefer, which you want ran, which I will do so under certain circumstances, email it here, Zenny at Zenny62.com. Okay, see that? Zennie at Zennie62.com, or go to Zenny62media.com. You can send it through there too. All right. See you later. Thank you.